Good morning. Today is Friday, September 26th. I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. A federal grand jury in Virginia has indicted former FBI Director James Comey. This comes after President Trump demanded Comey's prosecution. Trump also installed a new U.S. attorney who got the indictment only days after she took the job. NPR's Carrie Johnson says the charges against Comey are not very detailed.
This is a very bare-bones indictment, not even 2 full pages long. It seems to relate to testimony Jim Comey gave to the Senate Judiciary Committee in September 2020. He was talking about the FBI probe of Russian interference in the election and about a media leak. Comey testified he had not authorized a leak from the Bureau. The indictment says he did, and the statute of limitations on these charges was set to run out in a matter of days.
Comey says he is innocent, and he released a statement online.
My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial.
This morning, Trump insulted Comey, saying Comey lied and that, quote, a big price must be paid. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has addressed the U.N. General Assembly. Before he began to speak last hour, scores of diplomats and world leaders walked out of the room. The Israeli leader used his speech to castigate other countries that have decided to recognize a Palestinian state despite the war in Gaza. And Netanyahu blamed other countries who he says have left Israel to face its enemies alone.
Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved. And here's the shameful result of that collapse. For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a 7-front war against barbarism, with many of your nations opposing us.
The Israeli army has set up loudspeakers to blare Netanyahu's speech into Gaza. Israel has also commandeered the phones of Palestinians in Gaza to broadcast the speech as well. Netanyahu used his remarks to speak to Israeli hostages, saying they are not forgotten. President Trump has signed an executive order. It gives his blessing to a deal involving the proposed takeover of video-sharing app TikTok. This would be led by a group of mostly U.S. investors. NPR's John Ruwitch reports Trump says the deal will meet congressional requirements and protect national security.
The executive order paves the way for a framework agreement on the sale of TikTok to be finalized. It would see TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance divest to less than 20% ownership while U.S. investors step in and take control. A law passed last year requires ByteDance to divest or see the app go dark in the United States. The law arose out of the fear that, under Chinese ownership, TikTok could be used by the Chinese government to collect data on Americans or manipulate U.S. users with propaganda or disinformation. After Trump signed the executive order, Vice President J.D. Vance said the deal values TikTok at around $14 billion. He said the deal safeguards U.S. users' data and ensures that Americans are in control of TikTok's prized content recommendation algorithm. John Ruwitch, NPR News.
The Food and Drug Administration is reviewing the safety of Mifepristone. This is a medication often used for abortion and miscarriage management. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports the review does not have any immediate effect on the availability of the drug.
In states that ban or severely restrict access to abortion, many patients have gotten around those restrictions by using telemedicine and abortion medications they receive through the mail. A group of Republican attorneys general don't like that and urged the Trump administration's FDA to tighten access to Mifepristone. In a letter obtained by NPR, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and FDA Commissioner Marty Makary say they are re-reviewing safety evidence for the medicine and may change the prescribing rules. Professional groups representing OBGYNs have said, quote, Mifepristone is an incredibly safe medication and that FDA restrictions should reflect that. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News.
President Trump has signed an executive action that he says will create a federal response to domestic terrorism and political violence. Trump says federal agencies will examine what he insists are the funders of groups that are considered threats. NPR's Deepa Shivaram has more.
Trump says the Justice Department, DHS, and Treasury would be involved in the response to domestic terrorism and political violence through a joint terrorism task force at the FBI. He accused people who he said were rich members of the radical left of providing funding to protesters.
These are anarchists and agitators, professional anarchists and agitators, and they get hired by wealthy people.
The comments came a day after a fatal shooting at an ICE building in Dallas and the killing earlier this month of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News, the White House.
President Trump specifically mentioned two high-profile billionaires who have long supported liberal causes, but Trump provided no evidence of what he says are their ties to extremism. President Trump has announced a series of new tariffs on a variety of products. NPR's Ayanna Archie reports some of the levies are costly.
In a social media post, President Trump lays out a new 25% tariff on imported large trucks. He said this is needed to protect trucking companies that manufacture in the U.S., like Kenworth and Mack. He's also putting a 50% tariff on kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities, and a 30% levy on upholstered furniture. And branded or patented pharmaceutical products that aren't made in the USA will face a 100% tariff. Trump says the new import taxes must be applied, quote, for national security and other reasons, and will take effect October 1st. Ayanna Archie, NPR News.
A group of former Treasury secretaries, central bankers, and high-profile economists is backing Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. They're urging the Supreme Court not to let President Trump fire her. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the group has filed a Friend of the Court brief.
The petition was signed by both Republicans and Democrats, including Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan, Hank Paulson, and Jack Lew, among others. They argue that allowing President Trump to fire Lisa Cook would erode public confidence in the Federal Reserve's independence and jeopardize the Fed's credibility to keep a lid on inflation. Trump sought to fire Cook after a political ally accused the Fed governor of making false statements on a mortgage application. Cook has denied any wrongdoing, and so far her dismissal has been blocked by the federal courts. The Supreme Court has allowed Trump to fire leaders of other independent agencies, but hinted the Fed could be a special case. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
I'm Corva Coleman, NPR News.